Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I'm here today with Dr. Will Cole. Dr. Will Cole is a leading functional medicine expert who consults people around the world via webcam and locally in Pittsburgh. Named one of the top 50 functional medicine and integrative doctors in the nation, Dr. Cole specializes in clinically investigating underlying factors of chronic disease and customizing a functional medicine approach for thyroid issues, autoimmune conditions, hormonal imbalances, digestive disorders, and brain problems. He is the best-selling author of Ketotarian and the Inflammation Spectrum, and the upcoming book Intuitive Fasting, in which he shows how to use the powerful benefits of flexible intermittent fasting to gain metabolic flexibility and find food peace. Dr. Cole has also co-hosted the popular podcast Goop Fellows podcast and Keto Talk, and will be hosting the new podcast, The Art of Being Well, which launches in early 2021. And today was such a great conversation with Dr. Will. We talked about what intermittent fasting is and how to do it, what the health benefits are of intermittent fasting, what type, if you're on a certain type of diet, if you're able to intermittent fast, and if you're going to feel hungry when you're fasting, what intuitive fasting is, and how to distinguish between hunger and a craving. We also talked about caffeine and cortisol, black tea, green tea, all the benefits of each, and we talked about the gut, which is where all health really stems from. We talked a lot about leaky gut. So he really defines what that is, what to do about it, and so much more. I love talking to Dr. Will about all things health. He is one of my favorite guests that I've had on the show. So this promises to be a treat, you guys. This conversation, it just flew by. Time just flew. And like they say, when you're having fun, time flies by. So I hope you enjoy it. And it is my absolute pleasure to welcome him to the show today. Welcome, Dr. Cole.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. And thanks for having me back on your amazing channel.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I really got a lot of traction out of your last interview. People really enjoyed it. And I have to say, you are one of my favorite interviews on the show.
Oh,
so
thank you.
Yeah.
We have to make this episode even better now. I mean, we have a lot to live up to. I appreciate that.
You guys, if you're just tuning in, Dr. Will is going to talk about intuitive fasting today, which is really a hot topic these days. And he also, how I actually found Dr. Will is reading Mind Body Green. I was giving up caffeine at the time, and guess what? We're back. I'm giving it up again. And so I've been 6 days without caffeine. So my first question before we dive into the fasting topic is, I have went through menopause. I'm giving up caffeine. I've been off of it for 6 days, and I've been doing some of my own reading. So I want to know your opinion. If I give up coffee, because I know it really does spike cortisol, I've been reading, can I substitute with green tea, black tea? Is that going to equally spike my cortisol or lower it, like some reports I've read?
So here's my opinion on caffeine. And this is the heart of functional medicine. It's bio-individuality. What works for one person may not work for the next person. Even with natural things, even like real foods, like from the earth, natural stuff, like tea, like coffee. So consulting people for as long as I have via webcam, like with so many different walks of life and health issues and so many uniqueness that I've seen. If I hung my hat on one way of doing something all day long, I'd be proven wrong all day long for 10 hours a day constantly. So I have people that do fine with caffeinated beverages like tea and coffee. I have people that don't do fine with caffeinated beverages like tea and coffee. So, and then everything in between, like the gray areas of maybe it is, maybe it's not. That's bio-individuality. All right. We're all created differently. So this is my opinion on this, and I'm looking at the scientific literature and just clinical experience and seeing people with these issues, is that there are, first of all, we need to remember that coffee and tea are a whole food, right? They're not just caffeine. They have catechins, like EGCG, they have other polyphenols, they have antioxidants, they have minerals, they have a lot of different things within them. They're not just taking an injection of caffeine, pure caffeine. So keep that in mind as well. But first of all, with the specific, the body's ability to clear out or detoxify from caffeine, we all have different genetic variants. So there's one gene variant, which may have been the article that you read that I wrote about years ago, but it's called CYP1A2, which is a genetic variant that either makes someone a fast metabolizer or a slow metabolizer of caffeine. This caffeine gene, this detox gene that governs a lot of things, but one of them is clearing out caffeine. So someone who has a slower variant of this caffeine gene, CYP1A2, they tend to not do good with caffeine. They tend to spike cortisol more. They tend to increase anxiety, increase blood pressure, increase they don't feel good. They feel really anxious and wired, and panic attacks, their heart's beating through their chest, these slow metabolizers of caffeine. The fast metabolizers of caffeine, the opposite is true. The more they drink, the more protective benefits they get. And that applies to coffee and tea and any natural caffeinated beverage. So we're so different. And the cortisol spike, what researchers show is that, yes, there is a cortisol spike initially for somebody that's getting used to the drink, but the fast metabolizers, after that initial time, their body acclimates to it, and you don't see the same spike as you did at the beginning. So cortisol spike at the beginning isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just an adaptation to the drink. And a lot of things can do that too, not just caffeinated drinks like that. So let's just say you're a slow metabolizer of caffeine. And we look at these raw genetic gene variants from raw gene data and look at labs and kind of see, like, we don't just look at caffeine, but we're looking at a lot of different variables. But this is like a common question that people have, is that if you are a slow metabolizer of this caffeine, your body detoxes this slower, then limiting or avoiding caffeinated beverages is going to be a good idea. And they're naturally just going to feel better, have more balanced hormones, less stress, less anxiety, better sleep when they're off of it. Coffee and tea has about a third of a cup of coffee worth of caffeine. So it's like drinking a third of a cup of coffee. Now, this is dependent on how long you're brewing the tea, how strong the tea is, et cetera. I mean, there's a lot of variables, but it's about a third of a cup. But Camellia sinensis, which is the true tea plant, is black tea, green tea, white tea, oolong tea, pu'er tea, white tea, if I didn't mention that. So these are like the true teas. They're really the same plant. They're just prepared differently. So each one's going to have a differing amount of caffeine too. So black tends to have the most, pu'er, oolong, those are the black teas. They're going to have the most caffeine, but then green has a little bit less than that. White actually has the least amount of caffeine out of the Camellia sinensis plant. And then, of course, there are herbal teas too. There aren't actually true teas. If you want to get super nerdy, they're called tisanes. So they are just herbal like blends that we call herbal teas. So yeah, so that's that's all the nuts and bolts of teas and coffee and all that stuff.
I love that.
Since you asked. Yeah.
That's so great, because I know one of the first questions I always receive whenever, because we did as a group at the Sisterhood of Sweat boutique, we all did fasting. We did intermittent fasting for 2 weeks. And one of the questions, first of all, do I have to give up coffee? People are like, they're like, I don't know if I can do it if I have to give it up.
That's a common question. Yeah. Does it break my fast?
So I thought, well, we
Yeah.
can ask this at the beginning. I will say, just for everybody listening out there, I do feel better. I definitely feel better. I'm getting up before my alarm, not so tired. Although I never had a headache, but at first I felt a little draggy. And I think I feel more clear mentally as well. So those are my benefits so far, 6 days into
Love it.
cutting coffee. And I didn't really switch to tea until yesterday. I was like, okay, I just wanted to see how that was. And then I'm incorporating some green tea. And right now I'm actually drinking cinnamon tea.
Perfect. That's a good blood sugar balancer, supporting the
Yeah.
blood sugar balance. Yeah, and that's a good antioxidants. Great.
Yeah, yeah. So what exactly, for everybody out there that's listening, is intermittent fasting, and how does one intermittent fast?
So intermittent fasting is, as its name implies, it's a break from eating food. Another word for it, and these are euphemisms, or there's synonyms that are used interchangeably sometimes, but time restricted feeding or intermittent fasting depends on how you look at it. One's looking at food, one's looking at the fasting. But there's a lot of compelling research that I'm exploring in the book, which again, all the books that I've written 3 books, but they're all natural extensions of me consulting patients. My primary focus is patient consulting. That's what I really love. So you learn a lot of things as you're researching case studies and really wanting provide the best sources for patients. So that's what intuitive fasting is. It's a flexible intermittent fasting plan that is born out of my just clinical experience of seeing people and watching how this tool of intermittent fasting can be really an amazing, powerful modulator of our metabolism, of our immune system, lowering inflammation levels, increasing these anti-aging pathways, which we can talk about. But anyways, intermittent fasting is a time of breaking from eating. And humans would have done periods of intermittent fasting or longer periods of fast throughout human history. So the book really opens up with this concept of duality, that there's a balance that's intrinsic in nature. I mean, if you look at even the seasons changing or the tides of the ocean, this balance, the pull of the moon and the tides of the ocean, or the blooming of a flower in springtime after a long winter, there is this intrinsic balance in nature of which we are an amazing part of. And we are a part of nature, not to get super esoteric here about fasting, but the reality is a lot of health, really the roots of sustainable health is realigning ourselves with something that our genetics would have adapted to. So researchers estimate that our genetics haven't changed in 10,000 years, but yet our world has changed very much. We've lost that rhythm. We've lost that pause. And we're constantly, many people in the West are constantly eating and they're snacking in between meals to balance their blood sugar, that they're never giving their body a break to calm itself and to repair, because eating requires a lot of energy. So this is a very gentle, balanced, measured, flexible way of fasting to tap into our body's genetic ability to heal itself. Paracelsus, one of the fathers of medicine, he's called the father of toxicology. It was late 1400s in Switzerland. He was another name for him was the Martin Luther of medicine. He's the Reformation. He was like reforming medicine at that time. He called fasting the physician within, sort of tapping into this inner doctor, these healing mechanisms that allows your body to do it. It's because it's not preoccupied with digesting food all the time and snacking and snacking and snacking. You allow your body to pause and really tap into these healing, powerful mechanisms. So there's many ways to intermittent fast, but why I'm calling the book Intuitive Fasting is because it's really, I want people to get to a place of intuitive eating and intuitive fasting. But it's really hard to discern between what's your intuition and what's imbalance, because is it intuition or is it hangriness? Is it intuition or hormone imbalance? Is it intuition or insatiable cravings? It's when there's so much noise in someone's body, just like there's so much noise outside, there's noise inside too. Inflammation is noise in the body. And it's really hard to discern, what does my body really need? When I crave that donut or that Snickers bar, is it really my intuition or is it my blood sugar imbalance? So I want people to really hear the still small voice of their intuition, calm that noise. And fasting is one way to calm that noise, to center and root yourself in your body, to know proper hormonal signaling, to know when I'm hungry, I eat. When I'm not hungry, I don't. I eat when I'm hungry, I eat until satiety. But to gain that metabolic flexibility, amazing tool to do that is intermittent fasting. So that's what the book's all about, and kind of digging into that research.
You made me want to reach for my turmeric, my curcumin. Right? I'm like, oh, I forgot to take that this morning.
Yeah.
Just to get the inflammation down. And I love how you said it's noise in the body. We need to quiet the noise in so many ways, and that's really a good analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, will this, like for me, and actually several people in my studio, we had this issue when we did intermittent fasting. We were hungrier.
Mm-hmm.
We were hungrier. So is that a good thing, a bad thing, or should we change it up a little? I did the full, 16-hour window.
The way that I advocate it in the book is, well, first thing, yes, and sometimes hunger at the beginning can be a fine thing, because we're talking about intermittent. We're not saying long-term starvation. We are eating. And the other part of this is that chronic caloric restriction is not the same as intermittent fasting. So what we are doing with intermittent fasting is actually eating really ample amounts of good foods until satiety in the specific window of that intermittent fasting plan. So when you're breaking that fast in that eating window, you're making sure you're eating enough food. That is a really important fact that people need to realize, is that keeps your metabolism flexible. And by what I mean about that is that most people are metabolically rigid or metabolically inflexible. Like their muscles are tight proverbially of their metabolism, right? So they are in constant sugar burning mode. And that's like kindling on the fire. Kindling will create a little light, but it's going to burn out. You have to keep putting kindling on throughout the day to maintain that light, to maintain that energy. And that's what people's metabolisms are. They're burning kindling all day long. That's sugar for fuel. And they have to have their 6 small kindling meals a day to maintain that, or they're going to get hangry and irritable. And that's even a real food problem. Even if someone eats healthy, quote unquote, if it's foods that break down into sugar, they're still primarily going to be in this sugar burning mode. That's an option, but the alternative is burning fat for fuel, our own fat, as well as healthy fats from our food. So that's like putting a log on the fire. It's more slow burning. It's going to be more long lasting, more sustainable source of energy. So that's being fat adapted. What we are doing during these intermittent fasting windows is training our metabolism to put a log on the fire. But there's a time and place for kindling as well. So in intuitive fasting, it's a 4-week plan where we start off with a lighter fast, and then we gradually get deeper and then open it back up. So it's not always super tight. Like it's not always a deep fast, but it's a gradual, it's like a proverbial yoga class for your metabolism.
Okay, I
When
love
you're
that.
stretching it, that diversification, that macro diversification and eating window diversification is really, really important, because you're not doing the same thing all the time. You're allowing your metabolism to ebb and flow, to expand and contract. And that's metabolic flexibility. And you'll become a fat burner, but it's more than just burning fat, because fasting increases ketosis, beta hydroxybutyrate, which is a really amazing, researchers actually refer to the ketone beta hydroxybutyrate as the 4th macronutrient. So you have proteins, fats, carbs, and ketones, and it's a fuel for your body that can pass through the blood-brain barrier, so it can lower brain inflammation, which is associated with things like anxiety and depression and fatigue and brain fog. It increases mitochondrial function, increases autophagy, which is cellular renewal, sort of our body's natural anti-aging pathways. So many cool stuff that I want people to tap into. But it starts with a 12-hour fast, then to about an 18-hour fast, then to a 22-hour fast, then back to a 12-hour fast. So it's not always doing the same thing. Variety is a spice of life, especially when it comes to fasting. So I want people to find their sweet spot with fasting. So to answer your question, some people can get hungry at the beginning because it's doing something different, but just make sure you're eating enough food, and then you can mix it up. You don't always have to do the same thing.
I love that. We did start out, like you said, with the taper and then open it back up. So that makes me feel good. We're
Yeah.
on the same page. And so how does this boost one's metabolism when you fast? Because I've read that rather than the caloric restrictions, which slows your metabolism down, that fasting and intermittent fasting actually speeds your metabolism up. And I'd love to hear the science on that.
Yeah. Well, the main mechanism is that ketosis. And that's why a ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting has a lot of the same pathways as far as the health benefits, because they're both fasting. They're both, well, the ketogenic diet is a fasting mimicking way of eating, and intermittent fasting is actually fasting. So they're both increasing ketosis, which is this fourth macronutrient that really allows the body to burn fat for fuel and not always burning that kindling. So it's tapping into our body's fat stores to actually increase lipolysis or fat burning. So that's the main reason why. But if you look at a lot of different mechanisms beyond that that are really interconnected with ketosis, but they're independent as well, is fasting is a slight hormetic effect. Hormesis is like a good stress. So just like a sauna is good stress,
Yeah.
exercise is good stress, cold therapy is a good stress, and fasting is a good stress. So those things are all different hormetic effects, or they have a hormetic effect on the body, or increasing the state of hormesis, which that's another reason why it really allows your body to tap into these stubborn fat loss, if that's a goal for you. But if you don't have to lose weight, then you're not going to become emaciated with this either, because you're actually going to build muscle, because ketosis actually is muscle sparing. You actually build lean muscle mass when you're more metabolically flexible or fat adapted. So people don't need to worry about, because this isn't this chronic caloric restriction. If you're eating really good nutrient dense foods when you're breaking that fast, the fasting will complement muscle building and fat burning. So yeah, it's a great tool for really anybody that's struggling with these different metabolic or inflammatory problems.
Well, here's one thing that I know people are going to ask, because they ask it to me. Won't you feel hungry when you're fasting? Well, we were just talking about this, but like a full on fast, not just an intermittent fast, but like a complete, like you're cleaning your body out 24 hours or even 48, where you're only drinking liquids and not eating. What is your advice on that?
So the book, we start with a body reset fast, which is 12-12. It's really easy. You're eating between 12 hours. So it's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It's very easy. You're just fasting through the night until you break the fast at breakfast, where its name came from. And then week 2 is the metabolic recharge fast. It's about an 18-hour fast. So it's about a 6-hour eating window. Week 3 is really the deeper fast. That's the cellular renewal fast. That's when we're activating and supporting the autophagy, cellular recycling, cellular renewal pathways. We're increasing stem cells, we're increasing longevity pathways. That's what I call an almost OMAD approach. That's a 22 to
Okay.
2 hour fasting to eating window. So one meal a
Yeah.
day, or OMAD. So
Yes.
that is not a 48-hour fast, but it is a 22-hour fast. And that's as deep as we go on in the intuitive fasting, which, yeah, someone that's their first OMAD, they're probably going to be hungry. But that's when we lean into other things. Like, we're making sure we're hydrated. We're making sure your electrolytes are on point. You can drink water, you can drink tea, you can drink some coffee, because there's no calories. And it's actually, if anything, for somebody that tolerates caffeinated beverages, it increases lipolysis and supports those things. And tea does that too. I'm a tea fan. Like, I think you should lean into tea. But here's this little like biohacking thing. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but Earl Grey tea, which is a simple tea, right? It's just a black tea with bergamot oil in
I
it.
have some. Yeah. I love that.
I love Earl Grey tea, but Earl Grey tea has bergamot, which is a citrus oil from Calabria in Italy. And it's been shown, bergamot oil has been shown to increase autophagy too. So a good thing you can do no matter what type of intermittent fasting you're doing, is drinking some Earl Grey tea to support the cellular renewal autophagy pathway. So on like an almost OMAD day, which would be week 3 on intuitive fasting, I'll have like some cups of Earl Grey tea, which is still getting some caffeine, and as well as those catechins in the tea and the bergamot oil, the polyphenols in those. So that's a good tool. You can have the coffee too. You could technically add some bergamot oil if it's like a food grade essential oil. You could add that to water or something like that as well. So yeah, that's what I would do for that. Now, if someone's doing longer fasts, yes, the longer fasts you do, the more it's going to burn through your glycogen stores and you're going to feel some hunger. But once the body's more metabolically flexible, people will find that they can go deeper fasts easier.
I know, it's crazy because
Yeah.
I thought, because I'm so active, I was just like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not going to be able to go with food without it. And then I found, actually, I went longer than I thought I could. And I felt euphoric. Like I really just got over that whole like super hungry feeling.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. I mean, you are, because we're tapping into this thing, like Paracelsus said, the physician within, and allowing your body to burn ketones. And that 4th macronutrient, it's a fuel. It's a fuel. And once you get through your glycogen stores and your body starts tapping into that 4th macronutrient, yeah, you can go quite a bit. There are people that do extended long fasts once they get through that initial hump, they are so easy. It's counterintuitive, but the body's quite amazing that way.
Wow. It's just, I find this whole science around fasting fascinating. Does it matter what type of diet you were on, or can anyone intermittent fast?
It's a great question. So now in the research setting, in the scientific literature, most studies have been done with no diet changes to show the efficacy and the impact, the effectiveness of the fast, because they want to know, is it diet changes, is it caloric changes, or is it actually the fast? Well, the studies that show that fasting is beneficial, there was no changes to foods, and the actual windows that people ate were the benefit, not changing their foods that they ate. So we know that fasting, intermittent fasting, or time restricted feeding holds its own even without changing. But I'm a functional medicine practitioner, and I know I'm not in the research world. I'm in like the practical, how do I improve someone's health world from a sustainability, not just for a finite amount of time to prove a point in a study. I want to know how do you really integrate this long-term as a wellness tool? So I know that fasting can be exponentially amplified with a clean diet, because I am definitely not an advocate for people to fast their way out of a poor diet. Now, that doesn't mean that you're always going to be perfect, but it does mean, can we marry and amalgamate a clean, nutrient-dense diet with intermittent fasting to increase its benefits of both? Absolutely. And in many ways, intuitive fasting is sort of a part 2 of my first book called A Ketotarian, which is a mostly plant-based, clean ketogenic diet. Ketotarian is like my made-up word for that. And because, again, a clean ketogenic diet is increasing ketones too. So it's mimicking a lot of the same benefits of fasting without actually fasting. You can eat nutrient-dense, filling, delicious foods. So that's what I advocate for in the book, because it's complementing the fast, but we're doing clean carb cycling too. So we're not always in ketosis. We're increasing carbs around those eating windows to maintain that metabolic flexibility, because there's a time and place for the kindling on the fire. But we're going for cleaner kindling, like sweet potatoes and fruits and rice and things like that. So you're not always in ketosis, but that's metabolic flexibility. Log on the fire, kindling on the fire, both are needed. Most people are just always burning kindling. So I'm teaching them how to burn both.
What about diabetics? Can they do intermittent fasting?
I mean, there's some of the best groups of people to do it.
Okay,
Absolutely.
great.
You're starting off gently and you're leaning into it. And the way that I advocated to do it, it's not being aggressive or just doing it too fast, too soon. But of course, they're going to have to talk to their doctor. They're going to have to adjust their medications appropriately. If they're on like an injectable Humalog, Novolog, Lantus, Levemir, like a insulin, yeah, I mean, they're going to have to decrease the amount of insulin they're injecting. That's why I think if they're on prescribed medications for it, they should talk to their doctor. But absolutely, as far as research is concerned, it decreases insulin resistance. So it's a good thing for blood sugar stability. It's a great thing for increasing your body's ability to pick up insulin on the receptor sites of the cell membrane to be more insulin sensitive, meaning blood sugar balancing. And it lowers triglycerides, increases HDL, all the things that insulin resistance does. It reverses the negative impact. So yes, yes, yes. But the medications are the variable. Is that if the person's like on medications that artificially suppresses their blood sugar, they're not going to need to be that medicated as they get more metabolically flexible. And that's why these tools can reverse diabetes. You can get rid of it in most cases. So yeah, these are tools that you can lean into. Just
What's
talk
your
to your doctor.
thoughts on doing some kind of blood sugar testing when you fast? Do you advocate people do that?
Yeah, you can definitely do that. It depends on, there's two groups of people. There's keeping it simple people, and there's people that are like more biohacker, like next level people. The keeping it simple people, I don't want to alienate them and say, well, you have to do all this stuff to like do these things. Keep it simple, focus on the foods, focus on the fast. We keep it simple in the book too. But for people that want the biohacker stuff, I gave all that stuff information too. So I think you're absolutely right. From a biomarker standpoint, the only way you really can look at the objective data is numbers. So looking at the glucose, looking at your ketone meters, and there are some
Like
glucometers.
do you use strips, or what do you have them use? What's a ketone meter?
A ketone meter is similar to a glucometer. So it's going to be a blood sugar meter that also measures ketones. And then there's ones that
Okay.
just measure ketones, and there's ones that just measure blood sugar. But many glucometers or blood sugar meters will also measure ketones. There's different meters out there. A breath meter is another, like a Ketonics or another company like that can measure breath ketones. And the urine strips are okay at the beginning, but they're really not beneficial long term.
Are they that do you think they're accurate?
Not long term, they're not, because
Yeah.
you're gonna just be seeing if your body's good at peeing out ketones, which you don't really care if your body's peeing out ketones. You want to know if your body's burning ketones for fuel, burning that log on the fire.
Perfect
So the more
answer.
metabolically flexible you are, you may see no acetoacetate in the urine, and that's okay because your body may be just better at burning it. So don't see the negative or low ketone meter on a urine ketone strip.
That's exactly what
negative.
happened to me. Yeah.
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 Yeah, so it's good at the beginning because it's like a pat on the back and saying, okay, look, we're producing something, but you'll see that decreasing over time. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing. Yeah.
How can we distinguish if someone is having a craving or real hunger?
Great. That's a good question. Well, at the beginning, it's probably going to be pretty difficult to discern that because when you're metabolically inflexible, that's a metabolic confusion.
Yeah.
So it's really hard at the beginning, but the more that that's why we're starting with these lighter, moderate intermittent fasting windows and then leaning in over these 4 weeks. And then we're cycling. After the 4 weeks, you can cycle in and out of that. So you're not just stopping at 4 weeks. You do it as many 4-week cycles as you need to gain intuition with your body, hence intuitive fasting. So at that point, then you'll start to know the signals. You'll know, hey, like I am hungry and I'll eat then, look, this is a craving. I think the bigger way that you can see it, and this is maybe a little bit too broad for some people, but I think looking at what your body's craving and saying, is this nutrient dense? Is this healing? Is this going to lower inflammation levels in my body? Am I going to actually feel better long-term when I eat this? Is this building up my health? That's a good sign that your body may need something. And that doesn't mean that you have it right away, because if you're doing some intermittent fasting, you're actually therapeutically helping your body out. And then you'll just have that when you break your fast, because none of these are super, super long that it's going to be that long away. It's going to happen. You're going to be able to have your eating window. But typically the insatiable cravings are on things that were quick fixes to the metabolism, but will create longer term problems. So if think of like a donut or some sort of junk food that is gonna, first of all, those foods are designed to be super addicting as well. So they are not only designed to be super addicting, but they create this surge of sugar to create that kindling on the fire for a little bit, but you end up crashing afterwards and feel bloated, inflamed, like you just lethargic, swollen, that kind of stuff. That's a good sign that your body doesn't need that. That's not what the body actually needs for homeostasis. It's actually hurting your homeostasis. It's hurting your balance. So I think that's one way to look at that, is that actually, if it's something that's going to end up sabotaging you, it's really not your intuition. But as you get more metabolically flexible, you'll be able to see that more clearly.
Now, we were backing up just a little when you were talking about OMAD earlier. You're not saying one meal a day, I can just have cookies and cream ice cream and Oreos and all of that, right?
No. Yeah. So we want to be smart, especially with those deeper fasts, like that almost OMAD approach, which is week 3 in intuitive fasting. It's the cellular renewal. I want something that's going to complement the cellular renewal. So let's what are we doing during that fast? Like, let's even remind ourselves why we're doing it. It's increasing the stem cells, which is needed for repair. It's increasing human growth hormone, which is really needed for cellular repair and fat burning. And we're increasing autophagy, the anti-aging, anti-disease pathways, increasing mitochondrial function and longevity benefits, all that cool stuff. So we want to actually complement that fast that we just did the effort and the intention to do that. So let's lean into it. So those deeper fasts, I recommend a break the fast meal or break a fast meal. So that's going to be a gentle cooked food. Think like a bone broth soup or stew, or a cooked vegetable with some food, yummy food, or even a smoothie would be fine. But I like soups and stews for that, because your villi and your gut are going to be a little bit blunted. So, and that's normal part of repair and fasting. And also, back to your earlier statement about cortisol and coffee, your cortisol levels are actually going to be a little bit higher during a fast because of that hormesis, the hormetic effect. And that's part of the slight good stress that the fast is putting you on to allow those cellular resilience pathways and autophagy, et cetera. So when you're breaking the fast, you want to lean your body out of that state with something gentle. So a good break a fast meal is something like a broth, soup, stew, smoothie, something soft, gentle, cooked, easy to digest. And then from that, you can have a ketotarian meal, which can be maybe wild caught fish with cauliflower, a cauliflower steak, or you could do a salad with extra virgin olive oil. You could do there's so many recipes.
You're making me so hungry now.
Yeah, there's these avocado fries that I love. These they're avocado.
I have not tried that.
You need to try these. They're recipe and ketotarian, but
oh my gosh, I have
crusted
that
with
book.
almond
I'm
flour.
totally gonna have to make them.
Yes, I added that because I was at a health summit and they had them there. They were serving it to us. I'm like, I need to put this in the book because it's totally ketotarian. It's crusted with almond flour. There's a chipotle aioli dressing. So good. So good.
Can't wait to try.
So you could do that. Why is that? Because that's nutrient dense. It's filling. It has healthy fats, which is really good for curbing cravings. And your brain is 60% fat, and it's supporting the fast. So that week 3, we're doing that fast every other day too. It's not every day that someone's doing an almost OMAD approach. It's every other day because you're refeeding on those non-fasting days. So it's all about recalibrating balance into someone's life, because so much of our life is out of balance. We are just actually recalibrating our body's intrinsic balance mechanisms. So metabolically, we can be more realigned with our DNA, which allows our body to heal.
Now, back to the cortisol thing again. Does cortisol cause brain fog?
Perpetually high cortisol could, but we have to ask the question, why is cortisol high in the first place? There's a lot of reasons why cortisol can be high, because cortisol is not inherently bad. Our body makes it, right? It's needed for regulating blood sugar. It's needed for energy levels. It's an endogenous immunosuppressant, meaning it lowers inflammation levels. So sometimes people's cortisol is high for a reason. Many times it is high for a reason. So the question is, what's the balance? Going back to that Goldilocks principle, not too high, not too low, but just right, homeostasis. That is important with a lot of things in the body, specifically cortisol too. But cortisol should be higher in the morning, and then a nice S-shaped curve or circadian rhythm throughout the day to allow cortisol to be lower in the evening to allow serotonin to convert into melatonin and for you to get a good night's sleep. 95% of that serotonin, interestingly enough, is made in your gut and stored in your gut. So it's through the gut-brain axis, or the connection between the gut and the brain. Very, very important for proper sleep and energy levels and hormone conversion, lots of things. So cortisol being persistently high is not good, but cortisol being persistently low is not good either. So oftentimes when cortisol is really high, we have to ask the question, why? So we go in functional medicine upstream to the root cause. Is it mental, emotional stress? Is it some sort of lifestyle stress? Are they not sleeping well at night? And then if they're not sleeping well at night, why is that? Or is there some sort of driver of inflammation that's causing cortisol to be high? Because remember, it's an immunosuppressant. It's an anti-inflammatory that your body naturally produces cortisol. So sometimes in states of inflammation, your body's actually doing what it's supposed to do by secreting anti-inflammatory. It's part of the regulatory system. It's part of the checks and balances. So sometimes blaming cortisol is not the answer, because the body's actually doing what it's supposed to do. So the answer isn't just
the why question is
why. Yeah. What's the why? Because that cortisol being high didn't happen in a vacuum. There's a reason why. And the body's so brilliantly interconnected that we want to ask why. What's the upstream issue? So is it a chronic gut issue? Is it chronic stress? Is it a chronic viral infection? Is it some other immune issue? Is it a toxic relationship? Is it something mental, emotionally that's impacting that too? And it may be a confluence of those factors. Sometimes, many times, it's not just one thing. So yeah, you don't want cortisol persistently high, but we have to ask why it's high in the first place.
So for me, I really feel so clear-minded today, like so clear-minded. Like it's just uncanny, the whole feeling of the difference. So I have tested. I was like high cortisol. But I've heard a lot of times when you go through menopause that your estrogen and your progesterone plummet. So then when you do have stress, you're going to have automatically more cortisol. So to combat that, my doctor's recommendation was to cut the cortisol, like the coffee. So I have found I am sleeping better. So I'm thinking it all goes to the sleep. Now that I'm sleeping better, then everything's better.
So true. Sleep is underrated, too much underrated, because it's not just a luxury. You know, people say I'll sleep when I'm dead. It's a mandate on our health. It's not a luxury. And just one night of poor sleep can spike insulin. It will spike high sensitivity C-reactive protein. That's just one night of poor sleep, let alone the epidemic of sleep problems that we see in our world today.
World, everyone's waking up tired, just like every day, fatigue.
It's true. I mean, it's a confluence of factors too, but things that people are eating and drinking are impacting their sleep. The amount of technology, blue light activation of their eyes, brain connection there. Yeah, it's a lot of factors, but sleep is very, very, very important. So if you're not sleeping well, find out why, because that is a missing link for many people and what's keeping them back, whether that's trouble losing weight, trouble with lowering inflammation, trouble with moving past their plateau, whatever their health goals are. Sleep is so foundational. It's so underrated, right? Because we all know, sleeping is good for your health, but we don't give it the respect that it deserves. It definitely deserves that attention.
Yes. And today, just my workout at the track, running the bleachers, I was just like crushing my workout and I felt so good. And I knew, I was like, oh my gosh, it's totally the sleep, getting the sleep. And what is disturbing your sleep? Like you said, are you on, your devices late at night, which also kind of causes you to be charged? And are you drinking caffeine too late? Is there so much stress you're not sleeping well? I mean, so many factors.
And sometimes people are like with good intentions, having their supplements late at night and drinking lots of water, and that they're waking up to go to the bathroom at night. So what could be good is actually impacting their sleep. So like decreasing the amount of liquids before night, finishing that up earlier if that's a problem for you. And then like blue light blocking glasses can be helpful if you have to be on technology. I mean, the better thing is just to limit technology around bedtime. But blue light blocking glasses can help with tricking the brain in many ways to not be so stimulated. And there's many ways. I mean, look, that's a whole section in intuitive fasting because that is an impediment. We have to look at sleep hygiene because that's can definitely slow someone's benefits of fasting, because if they're not sleeping well, it's
Yeah,
impacting their
yeah. Oh my gosh.
healing.
I think it makes you hungrier sometimes too.
Totally. It increases your cravings for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, yes. Ah, 100%. Now, I want to ask you a little bit about leaky gut, because still many people have no clue what it is, if they have it. So how do you know if you have it? Oh, and what do you do about it? I saw some kind of drink you had for leaky gut. I'm going to try it.
Was it a tea maybe? I don't know.
It was a drink. It even had DGL, like the licorice,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
glutamine and all
Hmm.
that.
Oh yeah. I'm like the elixir king, man. I have so many
I'm
tonics and things like,
excited.
yeah. But so increased intestinal permeability or leaky gut syndrome is when things are passing through the gut that shouldn't be able to pass through the gut. And you have these proteins that govern your gut lining called occludin and zonulin. So we can quantify this on labs. We can run labs to actually see if there's increased intestinal permeability. And that can trigger inflammation throughout the body, because basically the immune system sees undigested food proteins or bacterial toxins called lipopolysaccharides or LPS to attack them, basically, because why are those things in the bloodstream? And then something called molecular mimicry. It's sort of the case of mistaken identities when the immune system then attacks certain parts of the body. And that can trigger autoimmune issues like autoimmune thyroid problems, like Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroiditis. It's over 140 different autoimmune issues. So it can attack the brain, it can attack the thyroid, attack the gut, attack the joints. It's the trigger of autoimmune inflammation issues, which I talk about at length in the inflammation spectrum, my second book. But yeah, it's a problem. It's definitely something that is one of those core upstream why things that we talked
Right.
about. It's not the only one. There's definitely many other factors to consider, but it's such a powerful modulator of our immune system, and inflammation is a product of the immune system. So to understand inflammation, you have to look at where the predominance of the immune system lives and resides, which is in the gastrointestinal system. And Hippocrates, we talked about Paracelsus, Hippocrates, the other father of medicine, he said all disease begins in the gut. And now research is catching up with that antiquity. But Hippocrates also put his patients on fasting protocols because of the benefits, the gut healing benefits. It allows your gut time to repair. So fasting can be a great tool, amongst other things too, to repair the gut lining. So I love the gut healing benefits of intermittent fasting.
So great. So great. So many things today. Well, I
Thank
hate to
you.
let you go,
Thanks for
but
having
this has
me.
been so great today. Where can everybody get your book and find you on social media?
Everything's at drwillcole.com. But the book comes out February 23rd, whenever people hear this in the future of 2021, but it'll be on pre-order before then. And yeah, they can stay tuned at drwillcole.com. I'll put all the stuff there. Check me out on Instagram. I'll share any updates on there too. So
And also just list off your other books in case people want to,
sure.
binge read.
Yeah, binge read. They can go to drwillcole.com for the links for those too. But Ketotarian, it's a mostly plant-based ketogenic diet. We talk about some intermittent fasting in there. Book number 2 is The Inflammation Spectrum, which is talking about inflammation and autoimmunity and some of the things we talked about today. And then book 3 is Intuitive Fasting, which comes out in February.
And the name of your new podcast again.
Yes, that's going to launch in January, and it's called The Art of Being Well. It's my first solo podcast because I hosted Goop Fellows with Goop. I hosted Keto Talk for like 3 years, but this will be my first solo one so I can geek out with people. So it's called
Oh,
The
I'm
Art of
excited.
Being Well. Yeah.
Cool. That's
Thanks.
cool. I have a couple connections I'll have to
Oh, yeah.
forward you that I think would be good for your show.
Yes, we'll have to have you on too. Of
Oh,
course.
great. That'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much today.
Yeah,
And I
of course.
just totally have to say, I love how informative you are, how passionate you are about functional medicine and your fresh approach to it. So
Oh,
thank you
I
so
appreciate
much.
that. Thank you so much. I do
Thank
love
you.
it. I love it so much. And yeah, I couldn't get bored with this. It's so much fun to see people's health restored and people overcoming these things. So it's very exciting for me.
So rewarding. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And thanks everybody for listening today. And if you have any questions for Dr. Will, make sure to put them in the chat on Facebook and I'll try to get them answered. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.